All right, so let's summarize what we learned. Okay, so we started with this Python 1. Okay, we learned right from hello world. We learned, just printing statements and functions with inputs, right? If else, then we learned data types, right? Then we also learned functions with inputs. We learned function that return multiple values, then that happens to return it as a tuple, right? Then, yeah, so we also learned list. We learned try except finally, which is basically exception handling in Python, right? Again, not very exhaustive, but something that's going to be very, very sort of foundational and useful, right? Then we learned more commands on list, right? Um, like, for example, fetching a particular element of the list, or last element or something like that, right? Or a part of a list and so on. We learned about this range function, for loop again, right? And dictionary. So tuple is represented like this, list like this, and dict like this, like shortcut or a cheat code, right? And then dictionary to represent an object. Then in the 2.py, we learned some operators. We also learned the operators that we can use, like and, not, in, is, right? Then we also learned basically some string functions here, right? The functions that are like this and the functions that are called on string objects, right? Two different kinds of functions in a way, right? Then some more list related things. Then we very importantly learned object orientation, high level but very useful, right? We learned inheritance right here, right? An employee is a person, right? But later on we created just a plain employee, but yeah, we learned that part here, the inheritance part, right? And then we learned package management with UV and pip. So if you become like a Python developer or an architect or somebody who just has to use Python, you're gonna realize, or wants to use Python, right? You're gonna realize a lot that the projects are either set up with pip or they are set up with UV. But this package management, by the way, also we learned this creating of packages and creating of modules, right? That part we learned as well, right? And we created that package somewhere here, right? And I'm going to make all this code available to you anyways. We also then created the, module and the package. We used it here, right? And then, as I was saying earlier, right, we learned about package management with pip and UV, setting your project up with pip as well as with UV, right? Here, right, one of them is easy, other one is traditional. People are moving to UV, right? We talked about that. And then we learned Flask, right? This is like a package that helps you create middlewares. We created a simpler one. Then we created the transfer object or a model object, which then we used it here very extensively and created this API. We also, so it's not part of Python course, but this is more of an HTML, CSS, something that we learned here, right? We hooked up this middleware and the index.html together. So essentially, we created this entire thing, right? Like posting the data, getting it back, right, and showing it. So that's what we did here, right? In the Flask demo, right? So be aware of that as well. Okay, yeah, so that really covers what we did in this Python course. Again, as I said, we are barely scratching the surface of things, right? But this is going to give you a good foundational knowledge to move on, and any new concepts comes along in rest of the other courses here, right? I'm going to explain that anyways, but I'm going to always refer back to what you would have probably learned in one of these courses, right? So be aware of that, right? Anything new, of course, I'm going to point that out. All right, so that completes the Python course as well. Make sure you practice, and uh, happy learning, everybody. And let's meet up in the next one. Thanks.